to ensure that we are now recording. Okay. We are now recording. Just for my verification, someone say something so I make sure that I have you guys as well.
Testing 1 2 testing.
Perfect.
Testing.
All right, guys. Like I mentioned before, thank you guys for being here. Originally, we were supposed to have had Jimbo and FlannelJack. Unfortunately, they had other matters that they had to attend to, and they couldn't attend tonight. But fortunately, we got great backups in Mimiq and Vencabot. I don't really need to make an intro for Vencabot. He's been streaming for forever, and you guys are all familiar. Mimiq is from the Colorado scene. He's been streaming for a few years now, and they both offered to help me with the seminar tonight so that I didn't have to do everything. So big shout out to them for stepping up and making sure that we were still, oh my God, Discord. We're still on schedule. We had to reschedule from last week because I was at Texas Showdown. And so I appreciate those of you guys that were patient and joining us for this. Just real quick, so that you guys have some frame of reference, if for no other reason you don't know who Venka is, give a quick little intro as to who you are, David.
Hey guys, I'm Vencabot. I've been streaming for a long time. My channel really grew when I started streaming Third Strike, and I've been really lucky to have been a part of the 3S community ever since. Basically, not only am I kind of obsessed with Third Strike, but I'm obsessed with streaming. It's been so much fun. It's very technical as you get deeper and deeper into it, but at first, there's basically a learning curve to overcome. The actual process of streaming doesn't really need to be that complicated, but it can be a little bit daunting at first due to all the jargon and the new skills you have kind of developed. So today's stream is going to be mostly about how to kind of overcome that first hump so you can really enjoy streaming, get really creative, help out your community and that kind of thing. But yeah, basically I've been streaming for a long time, like 8 years full time. I've been kind of on a hiatus lately, and I've been streaming both at my house and at various events like the Jazzy finale. It's something that I think that people could really enjoy. It's a very useful skill, and I hope that after today's seminar, you're going to feel a lot more confident getting into it.
All right, thanks, Venka. And then Mimiq, just tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you're from.
Sure. So, like Katie mentioned, my name's Mimiq, also known as that Blue Urian of Aki. I too am woefully obsessed with Third Strike. I've been playing since about 2014. I feel like Venka and I are going to be able to work together really well on this because we represent two sides of the same coin. Venka's been doing this for an extremely long time and has an incredibly professional stream. And I've been streaming for less time, but I definitely have gotten my feet wet with OBS. I've kind of tweaked it in my own way to have fun things for my viewers and have something that I'm happy with and that I was happy with when I was more actively streaming. And I'm hoping to be able to kind of bring everybody up to speed and help everybody feel a little bit more comfortable looking at this program and understanding that while it appears daunting at first, it's really straightforward and fairly simple to navigate.
Okay, appreciate that, guys. I too have been streaming for a few years now. I've streamed, both on my personal setup at home and then at a few events. I've used OBS, which is what we're going to be using today, as well as Streamlabs OBS, which is actually how I got started. And so I would say, don't do what I did, guys, and start with Streamlabs. You might as well just jump into it with OBS, which is why we're holding this seminar here. It really is the best of the two options. And so without further ado, if you guys want to follow along on the agenda, I've posted that into the text channel for this voice channel, so it will be in that window there. Also, feel free to follow along on the stream. Mimiq is going to be streaming his OBS setup, and so if you guys want to follow along, we are going to basically upload this once it gets fully recorded. We're going to go through the agenda, and then once we get far enough in it and complete it, we will then be taking some questions for you guys. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to interject in the chat. And then once we conclude the agenda, we will then start taking questions and basically just answer them for as long as you guys want. But without further ado, you guys go ahead and get us started.
Awesome. So yeah, I kind of created this agenda kind of last minute. I think it's gonna be pretty effective though. It's got a few different headlines. Basically, we're gonna start off with what is a live stream. So tonight's conversation is basically gonna be aimed at somebody who's very, very new to maybe even the concept of streaming. So I kind of want to cover, what a live stream is, what is OBS first and foremost, and then how to install it. A little bit of a tour. It's going to be kind of shallow. It's not going to be too in-depth, but rather more as a way to kind of get you blooded in the basics of what each button kind of does. Then we're going to create what's called a scene, which is kind of what your stream will see. It's kind of the most fun, creative part of OBS. You can kind of lay things out and kind of decide what you want and where. We're going to do it very, very, very simple. Basically, like before we got into this call, Katie, Mimiq, and I were discussing, basically we're going to use the kind of a framing device of creating the very minimum of what's required for a Jazzy ranking event. But really, these skills are going to be useful for any kind of FGC event or even any kind of gameplay stream, or even any kind of stream in general. Maybe even a non, gaming kind of a stream. But we're going to kind of use the very basics of like, what is the bare minimum required for a ranking event to kind of introduce you to the idea of scenes and sources. And we're talking about the credentials and setting up OBS so that you can actually stream to a website like Twitch or YouTube. It's going to be a little bit of a different process for each platform, but there are some similarities that will kind of help you out. We're going to talk about some of the more technical stuff that beginners find to be a pretty big hurdle I've found. In my position, I'm really grateful to have a lot of great friends who are also streamers, many of whom are very new to streaming. I find that they tend to get caught up in the issue of frame rate and bit rate. Those are issues that are kind of more technical that you're going to have to grapple with earlier on rather than later to get things looking how you like. But I think that with some, basic definitions in place, you're going to find it to be not that difficult to understand. We're talking about VOD storage. People that are going through all this trouble to stream, you're probably going to want to have your stream saved somewhere so that your hard work's not going, to only the people that are watching right now. Why not have it for people that are going to watch later, right? We're going to talk about how to save your stream to Twitch and YouTube so that people can watch after the fact, which is important for Jazzy, but also I think important for pretty much any streamer. Mixing audio is a real sticking point for a lot of streamers at every level. I think it's fair to say, I've got in the chat with me a few different audio engineers. You guys know that when you're watching streams on the internet, it's oftentimes the audio issues that are the most apparent when you're watching. And even streamers have been streaming for as long as I have. When you sit down at a new console or you're kind of getting a new stream set up, fixing the audio is going to be one of the trickier parts regarding getting the mixing right, getting the different audio levels loud enough without being too loud, and also having, the different audio sources like your gameplay and your commentary not kind of like fighting with each other. So we're going to give you a very brief tour of how to get that all sorted out. And then we're going to talk about, the more advanced stuff at the very end of the seminar. Really, the seminar tonight is going to be mostly focused on the simple beginner stuff. I do want to at least get your toes wet a little bit with some of the more advanced stuff. Give you something to think about exploring on your own. Things like filters, the other types of sources you can use, all the cool settings in OBS, how to stream to multiple platforms at once, like Twitch and YouTube all at the same time, and third-party stuff like little notification pop-ups and chat overlays, things you might want to use from other websites, and how to kind of broach implementing them into your own stream. But we're going to be starting off here with kind of like what is a live stream. I'm really grateful to have my friend Mimiq here to kind of mostly be hosting this show. I'm going to go and pass things off to him now to kind of talk about what is a live stream, basically.
Thank you for the handoff, Anka. Again, I want to start out real quick by saying it's an honor and a privilege to be able to be helping everybody here. Like Katie said, we'll answer questions at the end, but don't feel like there's, I always say there's no such thing as a stupid question. And not only that, but I'll give anybody the time of day if you guys need to hit me up or anything that you may need. Here to help bring everybody up to speed as best as we possibly can. So our first topic, what is a live stream? Well, it's essentially a real-time video feed that's viewable on a site such as Twitch, YouTube, or any video platform with live streaming support. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at a live stream. There's various amounts of topics between IRL streaming that you'll see somebody walk around with a phone. You'll see streaming for like what we're discussing today, primarily for fighting games or for game capture in general. But you can take these and apply it to any one of those facets. This is going to get you that kind of head start into the basics. The two main features of many live streams, you're going to have your cameras that's going to capture real world content that's going to be either focused directly on you, your commentators if it's for a tournament bracket, or it's going to be focused on your competitors as well. And then you're also going to have your screen captures. So that can be internal, so that's going to be capturing a screen from, say, your desktop PC, capturing a window like what you're seeing here now through Discord. Essentially, you're seeing my secondary monitor for that desktop there. And then the other side that you can capture are external devices. So using a device like an Elgato that's designed for capturing footage or gameplay from an exterior means. So either that's retro consoles, a modern day console like a PS4, PS5, depending on what you're running or what you're wanting to stream, or even old school vintage arcade boards. Live streams can also include audio, which is probably going to be the biggest part of it. You don't want to have just strictly video. It's not going to be entertaining for too many folks. And that can be captured with a microphone, which can originate from within the PC that's running OBS, or you can have an external device. I know in the past I've used, for instance, a Scarlett 2i2. It's a really great beginner entry to it. It uses XLR microphones. It's not what I'm using right now because I don't have my setup fully put together yet in the new place, but will show you how to walk through and capture all of these individual things as you need them. And then you're also going to have multiple screens that are going to be shown at different times. You're not going to just display a standard background like I am here while we're going through the first setup. You're going to flip through several different things that you set up ahead of time. It's not really something that you want to be doing in the spur of the moment. So we'll teach you how to have that set up and how to navigate between each one. Now, the big thing to note here, we're going to go over a couple of different terms, and we'll talk about two things in particular for this first part. It's scenes and sources. And as we go into more in-depth detail, I'll explain them a little bit in greater detail, but essentially a scene and a source. A source is what is going to be pulling things and is going to be putting it into the scene. And the scene specifically refers to what you are displaying or what you're outputting to your stream platform of choice. For this example, we'll just use Twitch as a catch-all. So, topic number 2, what is OBS? OBS stands for Open Broadcast Software, and it's a free and open source app used by virtually all online broadcasters. And I know KD mentioned Streamlabs OBS. That's actually how I got my start as well when I first got everything up and running. The way I like to look at things between Streamlabs and OBS itself, or OBS Studio as it's called, is Streamlabs offers and markets it as a white glove treatment, where essentially they give you a platform, they give you a program, it's all set up, ready to go. You just put in your information and you're good to run. Whereas OBS Studio, you have to tweak a couple of things, you have to get things set up on your own end, but you have a lot more control over the final end product and can put your own spin on for creativity. It's highly flexible. It's really easy to use. I know it doesn't look like it at first glance, but it is really easy to use. And there's a little bit of a learning curve, but mostly it's around some of the technical terminology around the video data stream, which we'll go into in depth a little bit later in this tutorial. OBS also allows the user to construct different scenes using a wide variety of sources, which may be cameras, individual windows, entire desktop screens like you see right now, the video feed from an Elgato or similar device, and all variety of audio sources. And we'll show you how to break those out as well. Not only that, but the user can easily switch between scenes and output them to a live streaming website or local recording. And like we said before, scenes is what is a collection of sources that is being output to your streaming platform of choice, and the source is what's actually pulling that data to send it to a scene. So, first things first, how to install OBS? Where do we go from here? Well, open up your browser of choice. Now, you can literally just type in OBS Studio, and you'll see that it is the first option here. And you can click in to go to the main page here, and already it gives you the download setup. And you're covered on whatever operating system you choose to use, whether that's Linux, Mac OS X, or Windows. For this case, since I'm running Windows, we're going to click Windows. It's going to automatically start downloading it. You can see we did a test run earlier, so I've already installed it. But you'll click through this, you'll get everything going, and then you're going to get this application right here, OBS Studio. So if we just double click it, boom. What are we looking at? There's a black screen, there's a section for scenes, sources, there's all these numbers, all of these displays. What are we looking at? This is really complicated. We're going to break this down and make it super easy. So your main UI here, you have all of your top settings up here. We're going to focus on scenes, sources, your audio mixer, and how to get into some of these controls over here on this side. So first things first, let's create a simple scene. Right now, it automatically sets up one as default. I'm going to create one here just to walk you through the process. So we'll call it test stream 3S because that's where my heart lies. And I'm just going to delete this because I have OCD. So test stream 3S, this is what we're operating out of. This is the scene that is automatically going to be put up once we start streaming. So let's start modifying what these scenes are. Go into here, you see sources down here. You can click this plus icon right down here for add source. And oh my God, another drop down menu. This is how intuitive it is. There's so many different things that we can use. For this case, we're going to do game capture. And we're going to label this, that way you don't get lost, because if I just leave it game capture, I'll show you this as well. It just shows up as game capture. And if you have a stream where you have a couple of different sources, you don't want to get lost in the sauce. So what we'll do is go back through. I'll delete it. We'll open up another one that's game capture right here, about halfway up. We're going to label it. So this is going to be called Third Strike. That's what our stream is going to be surrounding. Now it's going to default here for the drop-down menu. You're going to have all these other options, but we don't really have to worry about these. It's really simple. This is just for more creativity, or not creativity, but more in-depth control of it, for getting something quick and dirty and just something that can be put up on a streaming platform. This drop-down menu is what you're going to want to focus on. So it defaults to capture any full screen application. In this case, I don't want it to do that because I want it to capture a specific window. And for this case, we're going to test out Fightcade. So I'm going to open up the training menu. So you can hear the game audio going around in the background over the stream. I'm going to click capture a specific window. You're going to get another drop-down menu here for the window, and you're going to choose the correct one. Now I opened it after I went in to choose that, so we'll go back through. And here it is populated. So all I did there, because this window did not show up, is I just closed out of it. I double clicked here, or you can right click and hit properties and it'll pull up the same way. And then you can hit capture specific window and it basically refreshes where your sources are at or what windows you can capture. So I know this is the right one. I'm going to click it. I'm going to hit OK. And oh my goodness, we have a display. This is great. Now we have all this black.
One sec. Before you continue, I think it's just important to just point out, anytime you guys have any sources, whether that's visual or audio, that get added after OBS is already open. Sometimes you'll have to do exactly what Mimiq just did there. You'll just have to refresh whatever the source is in order to populate that. So let's say, for example, you open Fightcade after OBS is open. If you want to capture the actual Fightcade window, but you already have this popped up, you do exactly what Mimiq just did there, and then you just close that out and you refresh it when you open it. And when you click that drop-down list, every time you add something new, it will pop up in that list and it will populate there. But if you don't see it the first time, and you know that window's open, just close it out and then go back and repopulate that list so that it will show up in that drop-down menu.
100%. Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate the assist there. And again, if I am going too fast or if I'm kind of speeding through this, please let me know. Just ping me and I can go back over and review it, or I can slow things down a little bit. Okay, so now we have our gameplay, right? Now you see this black rectangle here in the center. Now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. You see these points here, you can click and drag at any one of these points and it's going to scale it up. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And now you see this gray hatch pattern behind it. This black border here in this rectangle is everything that's going to be sent into your stream provider of choice. That's the only thing that's going to be displayed. If you are seeing this pattern here, it means that there's portions of your sources that we've put into this scene here that are not going to be captured. It's just going to be cut off. This is all you're going to be able to see here. So I'm going to scale it back down, have it be just like this, and you can see that we have our game capture here. I'm just going to center it just for my OCD's sake. Boom, we're good to go there. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want a break in your stream profile, right? Not everybody's going to be able to man the microphones at all times. You're going to want to at least have something that you can swap to in between gameplay, and whether that's setting up your next round in the instance of this case where we're working with a bracket scenario. So before I go too far ahead, just like we did for the sources and for the scene the first time, we're going to hit this plus icon here for add scene. We're going to change the name of it because we want to be able to track exactly what we're moving to. So this is going to be, for this case, Jazzy Info Reel. And I'm just going to put in parentheses break. Okay, so this is still running in the background. Now we have two scenes that we can click in between and navigate through. What we're going to do for this one is we're going to add a second source, which is going to be a penultimate one. It is called a browser source. So browser, again, it'll default to whatever the source's name is, but we're going to change it just so we can keep track of everything. I'm going to change it to Jazzy Circuit Info Reel, if I can spell correctly. And here we go. So it's going to default to OBS project browser source. This is just telling you that you've added a browser source, but it's just defaulting to the original one. So we have to set the URL. I'll make this a little bit bigger that we can see it. Set the URL to the page you'd like to display. Now, the folks over at Jazzy Circuit are so incredible that they have already set this up where the only thing you need to do is just type this following URL in for the reel to show. So it's reel.jazzycircuit.org. That's all I did. Now, width and height. This is going to be for your resolution. I'm going to do in a standard 16:9 aspect ratio, which in this case is standard 1080p, 1920 by 1080. And I'm using my number pad, so it's triggering the save states that I have. Here we go. So it's going to be a little bit too big. And what did we learn about these hatch patterns here? That means it's not being displayed, and we're zooming in onto one portion of it. We're going to bring this all the way down. All right. Now we can put it right into the corner. It'll snap, and then we can just drag it down. And there we go. Now we have this running. Here's another part about this info reel. So these guys have it set up in such a professional way, it's even got audio baked into it. What we're going to do is by adding this source, it's automatically defaulting everything to the desktop audio within this audio mixer. And remember, this is a bare bones setup, so these are the only two things that come straight out of the gate. You have your built-in microphone, which is whatever your device, whatever Windows defaults out to, and then your desktop audio. We're going to click in to add a new source. We're going to, if I can find it, audio output capture, I believe, Venka, is how we had it set up.
For the microphone?
Yeah, well, it depends on what we're trying to accomplish here. So basically, what Mimiq is saying is that when you start OBS brand new, it defaults to having two different audio sources on every single scene. One is the desktop audio, they call it, which means that any sound your computer plays will be sent to your viewers as well. So basically this, the Jazzy info reel, it has that little video there. It will play that audio out of your computer speakers, and anything that comes out of your computer speakers will go to your stream by default. They call it the desktop audio. The other default, as Mimiq explained, is your Windows default microphone. So if you have a mic plugged in, Windows will probably know which one it is and put that onto your stream as well. You might not want that. You might want that after all. We're going to talk a little bit later on how to turn that off if you don't like it. But by default, yeah, every single scene has your desktop audio coming through it, as well as the default microphone. But we want to also show you guys how to add, for instance, a second microphone. Many streams require two. Or maybe your OBS setup doesn't have those by default because they were turned off at some point. And so, yeah, maybe go ahead and add a new audio source. It's called audio input source. Right there. And we're going to call that microphone or commentary, whatever you want to call it. So right here, you can basically choose your device. And I believe that Mimiq only has one device plugged in, which is his microphone. So we go and select that and hit OK. And now you'll see these added basically a second microphone with it. And for him, it's the same microphone as his other one. That's why when he speaks or there's sound coming through, you can see both of the sound meters going up at the same time. Because it's both the same microphone.
It's the identical source. Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll delete the second microphone. But we want to show you basically, how to add a mic if you need to add a mic for any. Thank you, Mimiq.
Now, what we can also do is if we go into our browser source that we just created, so we labeled it the Jazzy Circuit info reel. We can go into properties either by right-clicking and clicking properties or just a simple double-click. And you can select here control audio via OBS. This will add in a separate information window right down here into your audio mixer where you can control how much audio is coming into it. Now for this case, we're just going to leave it at full. We're going to leave this running. But just so that way you know that you can tick this on or off to be able to manually control that. Otherwise, as Venka explained, everything that comes through your desktop speakers or through your primary listening device if you're wearing headphones is going to go out to stream.
Yeah, an important thing to mention about the browser sources as well, which is, we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the seminar, but really, like Mimiq said, it's probably one of the most important, if not the most important kind of source in OBS. Another cool thing about it is that you can decide whether the browser is still running even when you are on your other scenes. So we have two scenes now, one of which is going to be the gameplay, and the other is going to be this little break screen. But if you'll do me a favor, Mimiq, can go to the properties of that browser source again.
Yes, sir.
You'll see in here that there are some toggles for whether the browser source will be running in the background while other scenes are open. So you can even cause it to refresh, I believe, right, when it comes back on. Yeah, so those can be very, very useful for things such as the Jazzy info and other stuff. Sometimes you'll want those sources running while you're on other scenes. Other times you won't. So something to keep in mind there if you're using browser sources is you can kind of control when they refresh, basically.
The other thing I wanted to add to with this, and I'm glad that Mimiq showed that you can control the audio. Sometimes the audio from your desktop, if you're using that option on OBS, will be set to a certain limit, and the browser source will just be way louder, or it will be the opposite, where it's way too quiet. So in order to control that audio individually, you would just control audio via OBS, and that gives you a lot more control. That way, if the audio is not loud enough, you can boost it up. If it needs to be turned down, you can turn it down. And you don't have to do that on the Windows side. You can do it entirely through OBS. So it's sort of one of those things where if you aren't comfortable with audio, a real quick breakdown is just going to be, if you look at those audio levels, you will see green, yellow, and red. Essentially, green, anything in that range is like pretty good. That basically means that the audience can hear you. You're at a pretty comfortable level. Yellow is sort of like a warning area of like, hey, this might be a little loud. You're what will happen is when you get to red, you'll hit what's called peaking. And that peaking basically means that any audio that hits that or further will get cut off. And so I know you guys have heard streams before where you'll hear people get really hyped for something and they'll yell and then the audio will cut. That's because they either have a limiter on it or it's just peaking. And so, when it peaks, it almost sounds like the audio is popping. Whereas when you have a limiter on it, which is like a filter for audio, it will just cut the audio straight off. And so you won't hear anything. You won't hear any like popping or anything. It will just do that. So that way, when you guys are looking at these audio levels as we're going through it, you kind of have an understanding of like, okay, like so long as it's in the green to yellow range, you're basically good. Any further than that, and you're probably not. You probably want to turn it down and adjust the levels to that. The other thing too is if you don't see anything and you need to see audio, that's giving you a cue that no audio is coming through, and you probably need to do some configuration for your audio there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about audio mixing in general later in the seminar. But I also want to stress to you guys that you don't need to be an audio engineer and have the most perfect audio to have a stream.
No.
I think that many streams are have some minor audio issues, but people still enjoy watching them, obviously. And it's going to be important to get your feet wet before you start kind of micromanaging or being a perfectionist. I think that everyone here who has ever streamed or is a streamer part-time or full-time can tell you that your first 100 streams are going to all have some kind of crazy issue.
Yep.
And
100%.
It's that learning experience. It's going to kind of help you improve it over time. But yeah, be kind to yourself, be gracious to yourself, give yourself a little bit of slack, and just enjoy streaming, man. Get in there and get your audio as good as you can. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Some kind of general tips on how to get that basically working. But yeah, don't worry too much about all the minutia.
Exactly. Not to get caught up in the weeds, but here's a quick overview of what that looks like. Thank you both for the assist, by the way. It makes it a lot easier because otherwise I feel like I'm just rambling on and on. One thing that we'll go into now is going to be section 6. That's setting up our credentials. Now, I have been so graciously voluntold to volunteer my own profile and dox myself, so don't look at anything on this stream. I'm just kidding. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how to connect OBS to your Twitch account using what's called a stream key. Now, one thing of note that I want to make very clear, your stream key is a personalized 20-something digit, 30-something digit, or integer password, essentially. You are never to share that with anybody because that's all somebody needs to be able to take your account and stream it from a platform like OBS. So that's private, that stays personal to you. What we're going to do is to set this up is everything's going to be hidden that we don't see exactly mine, but I can walk you through what walk you through the steps to get this set up. So at the top left here of the OBS window, we're going to hit File. We're going to go to Settings, and that's just one way to get to your settings. You can also come down here at the bottom right of the screen where it just says straight up Settings, and it opens up the same window. You're going to go into Stream. Service is Twitch for this example. Now what we're going to do is hit Use Stream Key. The server, we're going to leave that at auto. And then the stream key here, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your profile on Twitch. You're going to click your profile. And you're going to go to Creator Dashboard. Now from the Creator Dashboard, you're going to come down into Content, or excuse me, not Content. settings, and you're going to come into stream. My primary stream key, I'm not hitting show, but what we're going to do is hit copy. Just come right back over and we're going to paste it right in. And boom, that's all you need to get set up. That is how you're setting up your credentials to connect to your Twitch account. Now, we have that set up. We're not exactly ready to hit the start streaming button just yet. We're going to go through a couple of other things to make sure that your first stream is as close to a full success as possible. One of the main things is our next topic, understanding the difference between frame rate and bit rate. Now, OBS's frame rate is going to affect how smooth the animation is going to look, with 30 FPS being a standard, enjoyable experience for many games, while 60 FPS can improve the experience for fast-paced gameplay streams. I feel like if you've been playing games for any amount of time within the last couple of years, most people are going to understand the difference between 30, 60, 120. The higher the refresh rate, or excuse me, the higher the frame rate for your capture, the smoother the motion is going to be. But there's a trade-off. Higher frame rates are usually going to be better for motion clarity and overall viewer experience, but streaming at 60 frames per second more than doubles OBS's system requirements compared to the standard of 30 frames per second, and also necessitates a significant boost in bitrate. Well, what is bitrate? A video stream's bitrate refers to how much data is being streamed per second. So the less data being streamed per second, the easier the stream is to send, which is basically your setup from your computer and through your network, wherever that may be. That's you sending the data. And it can be important if you're streaming on a mobile network connection or other strain network to kind of quantify what we're about to go over. And then to view, and that's the viewers on the other side who are going to be tuning in to watch your stream, which may be important if viewers are watching on a mobile network, such as on their cell phones, or if they're tied in to either a home Wi-Fi or if that Wi-Fi signal is burdened. If you've ever tried to watch Netflix and you have somebody that's watching or that's also streaming something, you have somebody else that's downloading in the house and somebody else that's FaceTiming, you know, that buffering, that's kind of what we're talking about in those environments. Now, coming back to the bit rate, lower bit rates necessitate that the video stream be compressed to a greater degree, which affects how blurry or blocky the video looks during moments of fast motion. Think about if you've ever heard of the meme of, you know, this such and such is looking like it's in 144p. That's essentially what it is. It just breaks it down and looks real crunchy, essentially. The more drastically the screen changes from one frame to the next, so that's fast movement, especially camera movements, which can cause every pixel on the screen to change almost instantaneously, the higher bitrate you'll need in order for the picture to remain clear for your viewership. Now, we talked about bitrate, we kind of understand the basics of what it is. How do we choose what kind of bitrate we need? So to get into where we're going to be manipulating some figures here, we'll start from the beginning. We'll go into settings through OBS. Right underneath stream where we set up our stream key, we're going to do output. This is what is going to be displaying and streaming through your provider of choice. So your video bitrate of 6,000 kilobytes per second, that is going to be the, excuse me, I say standard, but really it's the default that OBS comes out of the box with. That's just what it gets set up for. Choosing the right bitrate means going as low as you can, where occasional moments of blurriness are still going to be acceptable, and this will depend on the type of contents that you're streaming. So experiment. And that last part, experimenting, is so wildly important. Nobody's ever going to get this perfect the first time. What I had to do when I was starting out my streams is I would stream, I would kind of just brute force my way through it, which isn't the best way to do it. And then after a 3 or 4 hour stream, I'd go back and watch a couple of clips and scroll through, and I'd realize, oh my gosh, nobody can really see what's going on my screen because too many things are moving. It just looks like a blocky mess. So I'd go in and increase the bit rate. Well, I would increase it too high, and then I would get complaints from my viewership saying that it's constantly buffering, and I'm thinking, why isn't that working? It's a fine balance and fine tuning it, and you're going to have to figure out what your network can allow, what your system can allow, because like it said earlier, the system specifications are going to more than double for the requirements to be able to stream at 60 frames per second at higher bit rates and with a lot of motion, a lot of things going on. Now, retro video games can often be streamed at exceptionally low bit rates because large pixels result in larger squares that are all the same color. But in retro fighting games, the entire background is often fixed in place for long periods of time with only the characters moving, which results in less screen movement overall. Now, the contrast to that is our modern day equivalent with high resolution games with spinning cameras. Think about, your Call of Duties, Battlefields, even something like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or Mario Kart World. A lot of things are going to be moving by really quick. They're fast paced images that are constantly shifting and changing. Higher bit rates are required due to how almost every pixel on screen will be changing on every single individual frame. Now, like I said, to experiment, figure out what works for you. For the sake of this tutorial, 6,000 is going to be a great starting point. If you find out that after a test stream that your network cannot handle 6,000, decrease it by 500 kilobytes per second or 1,000. Kind of tinker and toy with it. 6,000 is going to be more than fine because we don't really have the same old school broadband that we once had. We have modern internet that's a lot faster and a lot more efficient. So you can leave that as is for the time being.
Just as
Yeah, and I wanted
a
to
quick,
kinda-
just as a quick
Go ahead.
point of reference, just because I know like we're all Third Strike people. I have
Mhm.
streamed Third Strike pretty much always anywhere between 2800 and 3200, and it has always worked for me just fine.
Yeah, and I was going to say kind of the same thing, which is that I think that 6,000 is a really well placed default by OBS. It's going to be perfect for a lot of different kinds of streams. Their old recommendation going back a couple years ago was a 4,000. But I think that as kind of time goes on and we have more fiber and stuff, and we have 4G, 5G phone internet, we're seeing people being more open-minded to having a higher bit rate, so they can have a higher quality video for more stuff. But if you guys are, streaming at a venue, I was talking to Mimiq and KD about this earlier. If you're at a venue like an arcade or a bar, very oftentimes the network is really, really, really strained. Like they're have people on that are on Wi-Fi, or they're paying for a crappy internet package in the first place. And we've had so many issues with streams in the past where the bit rate was just too high for the network we were on. And in the case of Third Strike, Katie points out you can go as low as even below 3,000. I streamed Katie Pokemon Red and Blue one time, and I was down in the lower triple digits of bitrate and had no issues with compression. No issues with compression because everything's perfectly still. It's huge pixels. Nothing's moving, and even if it does move, it moves in a linear way, right? Because it's a scrolling game in that case. And so is Third Strike, and so is ST, and so is most even modern 3D fighting games can be pretty easy to stream on the bitrate because you have a background that is, if you're in the corner, right, it's fixed most of the time. If you're walking back and forth, the background is moving just in a very simple horizontal way, which most compressors handle very well. But like Mimiq pointed out, if you're playing like a first-person shooter, or you're playing Mario Kart, or you're doing a live stream, like a real live stream, right, with a phone camera, and you're walking around, because the screen is constantly changing in unpredictable ways, it'll start to look real blocky, even up to 10,000 kilobits per second sometimes. So definitely, like Mimiq said, give it the old college try, stream something, watch it back, and if it looks kind of blurry, consider raising it, the bitrate that is, but knowing that every time you do raise it, it might kind of make it harder to watch for some viewers who are watching on crappy connections. Whether they're on a cell phone or there's that bad internet at home, or people are watching Netflix while they're trying to watch your stream, or it could be somebody that's over there, in another country where the internet's not quite as good. There's lots of reasons to consider basically, watching your stream back on the VOD. And if you don't see issues with the picture quality, maybe lower it. Just lower it and see what happens. And lower it until you have a problem with picture quality, and then decide where you want it to be. Or if you do see problems with picture quality, consider raising it, knowing that there's a trade-off. Sometimes if you have, a little blurry scene here and there, it's worth leaving it where it is because, yeah, it's blurry very rarely, but, it's still nice for the viewers to not have to have a bigger stream to download. Yeah, so bitrate is kind of like a there's no hard rule regarding how high or low it should be. Just, the default is probably fine for most cases, but consider playing with it a little bit. See, how you like it until people start to complain that, it's buffering for them because it's too much bitrate. Or, they're saying, hey, this stream looks like shit. It's a bunch of blocky, nonsense on stream right now. Maybe you consider trying to raise that bitrate a little bit. But yeah, it can be a lot of fun. It's one of those things with streaming that's kind of under your control creatively. But definitely play with it. Thank you, Mimiq.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, to go off of Venka's point, he said, hey, play around with it, experiment, watch it back. We've said that a couple of times now. Stream something and watch it back. How are you going to navigate that? Well, that brings us right into our next topic for configuring your VOD storage. Now, Twitch and other streaming platforms are going to allow you to save VODs, or aka video on demands, for some amount of time, although this feature may need to be manually toggled in your account settings. So what we're going to do is show you how to change that to make sure that it does save it. So we'll come back here, and just to get a fresh start here, We'll go back starting from the channel. You're going to click up here. Don't look at my face. You're going to go to Creator Dashboard. You're going to come down here to Settings, back into Stream, and you're just going to scroll down a little bit from where Stream Key and Preferences were, where we got our Stream Key. Where it says VOD Settings and Stream Rewind, you want to click this first setting here, Store Past Broadcast. It says automatically save broadcast for up to 7 days, and then 14 days for affiliates, 60 days for partners, etc., etc. Once by clicking this, after you complete a stream, you'll be able to go in and manually view each one of them and take a look at them as long as they're within this range. The other part of this too is, say you had a really hype stream, or for the example of the Jazzy Circuit, Venka, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, it's 6 months that you have to keep the VOD up?
Yeah, so the requirement by Jazzy is to leave your VOD up for at least 6 months. I think that most people that are going to save the VOD, they're going to want that saved indefinitely, right?
Yep.
To just have access to it, to see the player's growth and to enjoy the commentary again and just kind of relive the memories. So yeah, VODs and having them saved permanently is very, very important. But yeah, if Twitch only saves them for kind of a certain amount of time, I'm sure that other platforms are kind of the same way to save storage space. I found that YouTube is one of the very few that will kind of let you upload unlimited video and save it forever. So definitely consider using YouTube in that capacity.
And to be able to do that, all you have to do is come in here into your content side, go into video producer. So you see here, I have 21 hours, 33 minutes out of my allotted 100 hours that I can save on here. Now, I have a couple of clips from my old streams, a TikTok clip, and then my old PB when I was running Super Mario 64. All you have to do is you click these three dots, hit edit, and then you can hit export up here. Now, I've already logged into this, but the first time you do this, it's going to prompt you to sign in or log in to your YouTube account. After you do that, it's synced. You can hit start export, and then it'll automatically start uploading it to YouTube. Now, I really wish I could just pull up my YouTube channel and just show you immediately, but it does take some time. I mean, this is a 1080p video, and it is 24 minutes in length, so it's probably a good gigabyte or so. So that's going to take some time, but just know, as long as you have everything logged into the correct profiles, it'll go into the right spot.
Yeah, one thing I want to add on to that real quickly is when you are uploading, especially a large file, anything over 30 minutes essentially will be essentially very large files. You won't see it immediately in your video feed, but if you go into the, I believe it's like YouTube Studio section of YouTube, this is essentially the creator portal section of YouTube, you will see that it's uploading, and so you will see like an in progress sort of part of your video, and so you will see that it did actually get exported, but it will take some time before it's available to even preview. I think the way that YouTube works with the export is it'll upload like an SD version first, and then you will get like the HD version. That's typically how it's worked for me. So don't panic if you don't see it immediately in your feed. It will show up, once it's gone through the processing.
Right,
Yeah,
and with most of us being Third Strike folks here, I mean, I can speak from my own personal experience that I've definitely had really great, or on the controversy or on the opposite side, really poor bracket runs that I really want to go through and review. And I'll hit up whoever was the stream runner and say, hey, where's the VOD? Is it up yet? And I do that after like 2 hours of the bracket being over, but that doesn't help because it's still going to be uploading. That's why it'll usually take a day or two, especially for something where you get, say, top 16, top 8, like KD mentioned. That's going to be several hours of footage. It's going to take some time. So just be patient with it. Don't think it's broken and it's not working. So you try and export it a bunch of times. It'll go through. Just give it a little bit.
Yeah, and I wanted to say a couple things here real fast. One is that our friend Donald, aka I'm Borderline, aka the god of EC3 Arcade, points out in the chat here that one way to kind of consider playing with your bitrate, going back to the previous topic, is to look at your analytics or otherwise ask your viewers what platform they're using to watch. And that could be a lot of mobile viewers. If there's a lot of mobile viewers, that could be a good reason to consider lowering your bitrate a little bit. The other thing I want to say is that, I really wanted to be here and kind of get this show on the road for you guys and kind of listen along and, also kind of brush up on my own streaming skills a little bit. That being said, I do have to kind of step away here, unfortunately. But, dude, Mimiq, KD, amazing seminar so far. It's been so educational, so clean. I appreciate you guys giving your time to kind of host this event tonight. But I do kind of have to step back here at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here, Venka. Thanks, man.
Yeah, good night, guys. And thank you for everything. Thanks for being here as well, all the people that are watching tonight and watching on YouTube later on. thanks for checking out Jazzy Digital Workshop. Peace out, guys.
Yeah, so the for the rest of the workshop, it's just going to be Mimiq and I. But we're a good way through the agenda, and so like we mentioned in the beginning, once we get to the end of agenda, if you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, we're more than happy to go through it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll extend that too. If anybody wants to add me on Discord after we're done here, please feel free to shoot me a message whenever you feel free. Obviously, we're all working stiffs. We all have daily jobs and lives that we handle, but don't be afraid to shoot me a message if you need help with something. If I can get to it immediately, I will. But if not, then I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. But just so that way you feel like you're not just kind of, pardon my French, but up shit's creek. You have a whole wealth of support, an entire community of people that want to see everybody succeed along with each other.
All right, let's get back to the agenda.
Yes, sir. Mixing audio. So I'm going to rely on KD a little bit more because he is the master of this and is a lot more familiar with what is going to be the best way to describe this.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I went to school for this, and there really isn't a super easy way to sort of describe mixing audio, but that's why I made reference to the colors. The color gauge is a good way to sort of tell whether or not your audio is generally good. Essentially, there are some good, rules of thumb. You want to be able to hear everything without it being, an assault of sound when people turn on your stream. And so generally, you don't want anything really to be too loud. But what happens is if you were to put the volume sliders for all of your audio assets like in the middle, what will happen is your audio will be too quiet. People will have your audio on max, and then they'll have to turn, their audio source all the way up. And then when anything else gets turned on, they'll just get blasted with a cacophony of sound. And so really it's going to take some tweaking. I've found that generally, you want your game audio to be a little bit quieter than if you were going to have commentary. You want your commentary to come through. You don't want your commentators fighting with the game to be heard. And so essentially, your microphones and all of your microphone inputs or for all of your commentators are going to be, mostly your loudest audio sources. But then you also don't want it to be so loud that they drown everything else out. And so you kind of also have to, keep an eye for clipping. That's the thing that I had mentioned before when your audio levels will hit that red section. A real quick breakdown of what audio is essentially is you'll have these frequencies. And so human hearing only goes within a certain range of those frequencies. If it's too low, you won't hear anything, but if it's too high, you also don't hear anything. And so we have this general range that we work with. Volume is very much the same way. And so what you're trying to do is you're just trying to maximize the audio that you have without things being too loud. There are all sorts of tools that you have available to you in OBS itself to be able to throw filters on things. One of those things that I mentioned before is a limiter. What a limiter does is essentially what it sounds like. It limits your audio. If you don't want your audio to go past a certain point, you will throw a limiter on it. There's also an expander. It does exactly what it sounds. It will expand your audio. So if you want your audio to go beyond a certain range, you would throw an expander on it. And then there are filters that you can put on it to sort of like, improve the audio quality. There are bass boosts to, sort of make the bass and things sound a little bit louder. You can throw, different filters on it to get different effects. I don't want you guys to get caught up in the minutia of it. I just wanted you to be familiar with it. Essentially what you're trying to do when you have any scene is you're just trying to manage the audio within that scene. So don't worry about the scenes audio overlapping with each other. Generally in OBS, when you switch from one scene to the other, the audio from one scene will cut off as soon as you move to another scene. There are exceptions to that. For example, with this browser source, if you wanted to, you could have it continue to play while you're in another scene. Generally, that's not something that you would want all the time. But if that is an option, let's say you are nearing the end of a stream and you want to have your commentators on the commentary scene be able to commentate while the Jazzy reel is going on, you have a couple options to be able to do that. But one of those ways could be you can go to the commentary scene and then you can have that scene running in the background. It gets a little complicated if you do that because the audio sources are not all accessible at the same time when you're in different scenes. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind if you try to do that. I think for the purposes of people that are brand new to OBS, the only things that you're really trying to worry about is making sure that you're not clipping and that also you do have audio levels. So like I mentioned before, if your audio section is showing that it's grayed out, then that means that there's no audio coming through. And the ways that you would test that would just be to make sure that you're selecting the correct audio source, to make sure that you have the volume raised on it, and to make sure that it's the audio source you actually want. One of those things that I know that's happened to me before is with like capture cards. If you guys have a capture card, a lot of times, for whatever reason, OBS is kind of funny with capture cards and audio. And so even though you can hear it on your end as the person running the stream, the stream itself might not be able to hear it unless you toggle a box that says listen to this device. That's like a Windows setting. And so, it's specific audio, specific capture cards that have that option. Sometimes OBS will detect it, and then, in which case you don't have to find that. But if you have a source that you've put into a scene and you don't have the audio playing through, there are a few reasons why that may happen. One of them may be, like I'd mentioned before, you added it after OBS had already been open. That's a common one. So anytime you add any source at all after OBS has already been open, a lot of times a real quick, easy fix is to just restart OBS. A lot of times that will solve your issue. Another thing that will happen is if, say for your desktop audio, let's say you were using your speakers before you plugged in a headset, and so then you switched to the headset after you opened OBS. Well, your OBS still thinks that all of the audio is going through your speakers. And so it's going to play all audio out through your speakers like it was when you first opened it. And when you switch to your headphones, even though your computer is playing sound out of your windows, OBS is not. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but just imagine it like plugging in headphones after your after OBS has been turned on, and OBS being confused about where the audio should be going through. Again, the way to fix that is real simple. Just close OBS and reopen it. A lot of times that will solve most issues. It's very straightforward that way. And then the other best practice would just be, if your stream doesn't sound, exactly how you want it to, a lot of times if you have people in your stream, just ask them, are things too loud? Are things too quiet? Let me know if it needs any tweaking. Typically it almost always does. And so I wouldn't nitpick too hard about that. You just want something that isn't going to blow people up, especially for headphone users, but you also don't want something so like quiet that people can't hear what's going on. And so I would just play with the audio levels till you get something that's, to your preferences. I have probably tweaked my audio in OBS more than any other setting. And so it is something that you will just continually play with over and over and over again. Even once you get comfortable with it, you're like, I could probably throw a filter on it, or I could probably get this to sound a little bit better. It's never going to stop. But yeah, as far as audio goes, if you have any questions specific to it, definitely, like Mimiq had, mentioned, reach out and hit me up. It's something that, when you first get started can be a little overwhelming, particularly if you're using anything that is not a capture card. It gets really complicated once you start adding like mixers, like physical mixers, and you start adding like, audio out directly from boards. All that stuff can get very complicated very quickly. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed by it, let's say you're trying to stream from a Third Strike board for the first time, and you're like, I don't understand how any of this is working. Don't worry, I've been there as well. I have run the gamut of all the audio issues that you could possibly run into when streaming Third Strike. So, if you guys have any questions, definitely hit me up. I'd be more than happy to help.
Thank you so much, KD. Again, a wealth of knowledge. And like he said, right, nothing's perfect, nothing's set in stone. You can be super happy with it on a Friday. You do your stream, you watch it back, and you think, I could make this a little bit better. There's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with trying to tweak it. Or on the other hand, as well, there's nothing wrong with leaving it as it is. If it is sufficient and gets the point across, and that's all we're trying to accomplish, hell yeah, fucking send it.
Yeah, dude,
Now,
it's also I've had this happen to me where you have a pair of headphones on and it sounds great in your headphones and you're loving the way the stream sounds, and then you watch back the VOD later on your phone and you're like, damn, this sounds like shit. You're like,
yeah.
this doesn't sound great. So audio will play tricks on you. Don't fret. It's something that happens to everybody. You'll figure it out.
And like we said at the beginning of the seminar too, your main goal here is to experiment, right? For anybody that's ever done any type of mixing, mastering, or trying to, record music, right, or record an instrument, there's a saying in there that you have to always do the car test, the car stereo test.
Yep.
That's the way to be able to understand what it sounds like to everybody else. And the equivalent of that for streaming is going to be watching your VOD back and listening to it, whether that's from your phone or back through the same headphones that you have, but seeing what was captured. That's how you experiment. You have to know where you're going wrong and make those little tweaks and adjustments as much as possible. Now for our final section for the seminar, it's a more advanced tour. So we'll discuss what each of OBS Studio's built-in source types are used for. And we'll kind of take turns with this. There's a bunch of different ones. This beta one I'm not familiar with because this is a new addition from when I was streaming. KD, can you touch on that?
On this application audio capture beta, this is new to me too, man. Anything that's in beta, I can't speak to the veracity of, but if it's in beta, it likely has some bugs in it. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's something that if you want to play around with it, what I'm gonna guess is it's got its own mixer. That would be my guess. So if you add that plugin or you add that option.
Yep, it shows up right here.
Yeah, it's its own mixer. So essentially, what I had mentioned before, it allows you to control the frequencies a little bit more, the decibels a little bit more. Audio refinement is a never-ending rabbit hole, and if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, definitely get in my DMs. I will talk about all of the minutia of audio if you like.
Perfect. Next, we have audio input capture. I know we touched on it a little bit before, but essentially what this is going to be for your microphone. Now, whether that's a built-in headset mic that doesn't sound too great like I have here, or you have a separate setup with an XLR or a USB mic like a Yeti. I know they have so many different types now, but you can come in here to this drop-down menu where it says default, and you can choose and select exactly which one. And as we talked about before, you'll see these two copied. Let me see if I can do this, if that changes it. It doesn't. I wanted these to be side by side, but you can see is that as I'm talking, my microphone's already captured here for the global side, and then this is an individual source that's also capturing it within this specific scene. And since it's the same input, it's getting the same readings across the board, but that's how you add a microphone.
Yep. Now, this also sort of works for if you have a physical mixer. A lot of times a physical mixer will have its own volume knobs and settings that you can sort of adjust. But for the purposes of OBS, it reads it as a single audio source. So instead of having like if your mixer has room for like 6 XLR mics, right? Your OBS is essentially just going to treat that as one plugin. And so that will be managed mostly on the physical side, but there are still some digital tweaks that you can do to it through OBS.
Absolutely. Going down the list here, audio output capture. This is going to be for capturing kind of game audio, but it's also capturing it from a source that you're outputting it to. So in this case, you see I have 3 different options here. This first option is going to be one of my monitors. This is the other monitor, and then these are my headphones. This is going to be for like what your equivalent of your speakers were. Now, if I had my desktop speakers turned on, you would see that coming up here. But what this is doing is that it's capturing the audio that you're sending to a specific output. So in the example here, let's say you want to have the commentary headsets exclusively hear the game audio, and they don't want to hear anything else besides the game audio as well as themselves talking to each other, you would capture this and you would send the audio from the game to that specific point. And just to keep things tidy, that way it doesn't get too confusing, I'll keep deleting them. Browser source we went over before. Color allows you to add a color background into specific areas. I know I've used this before for a green screen effect, right? Where you can come in and add anything over. I didn't get much use out of it. It is helpful to a point if you are finding a way to be able to incorporate that, but it just allows you to add a full color background. Another way besides like a green screen effect that I think that we can use to explain this is let's put it to a nice blue, you know. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong okay. And I'm just going to copy this. We'll go into test stream 3S here, and I'm going to paste our color here. I'm going to put it behind our game capture, maybe. There we go. And now you can see that there's this nice, lovely blue background behind it. So that's one way that you can be able to use it and utilize it in your streams. It's not super necessary,
Can
but
I wanted to add, like, because I don't think we went over it. One of the things that you just did, which is super helpful to know, your sources on the bottom side, very much like your scenes, will actually
yes.
show up as you have them listed. So let's say you want that blue color, that solid blue color that he added as the background, it would have to be behind everything, right? Similarly, if you wanted something else in the background, or if you wanted things like, let's say you have alerts, right? And you want those alerts to pop up when people follow you, or they give you a donation or some sort of subscription, right? That would have to happen as something that would be what you would call like a higher layer, right? So the more layers you have underneath it, the more things that are going to be underneath it when that source gets activated, right? And so whenever you have an active source, anything that's underneath it, it will appear above. That's also true for basically any sort of like chat boxes, or any mics, or I'm sorry, any cameras. So like if you have a webcam and you want your webcam to be on top of everything, then that would have to be like the bottommost layer, right? So essentially think of it as like a sandwich, right? Anything that's at the very bottom is going to be in the background, and then anything that's anything that's at the very top will be in the background. Anything that's at the bottom, anything that gets added, will be your top layers. There are a couple things that you can do with that too. Like let's say, for example, you want to have that blue on top of your game, but you want to give it some opacity. That's where you would go into like filters. And so what that would essentially look like is it would give like your game and everything above it is sort of bluish filter. And that way, opacity just makes it to where it's like a little bit more invisible and you can see through it. So even though it's the top layer, you would still be able to see the layers underneath it because you made it more opaque.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a killer way to be able to describe that. Display capture and game capture are going to work a lot of the same ways. What we'll do here, we'll just do main desktop. That way we can have it labeled. Capture method automatic. You're just going to want to leave it where it's at. And then your display, this is where you select which one. So this is my 4x3 old school CRT monitor. And then this is my high refresh rate and low response time. So if I just grab that, you can see this beautiful screen here of the Discord channel. And that's how that is captured. Now, since I don't want to have that shown, I just take it and delete it. Oh, I'm moving preview by the arrow keys. That's funny. I forgot I had that bound. Image. So I actually have an example for this. I'm going to scoot Third Strike all the way over here to the side. And for keen-eyed observers, you'll probably notice that it's not exactly 4:3, that somewhat offset square. It's a little bit more of a perfect square. So the aspect ratio isn't perfect, but it's not a huge deal. This next option here for image, I'm going to do, I'm going to call this offset side art. And then it's going to give you this option here. So your image file will go to browse. And I know I just put it into my downloads. So I'll put it right here. Oh my gosh, beautiful third strike art. Who could have seen that coming? So obviously, you have these where you can manipulate the image. And perfect, that cuts it off just about right. And like KD was mentioning, let's say I don't want this to overload on top of the 3S game capture. I want it to be underneath, so I put the 3S side above it. That way it's overlapping on the side. Now, another thing that you can do too, and I don't want to get too thick in the weeds here, but just some quick points of reference. If you come in here and hold Shift, you can change one side of the dimensions. And that way you're only manipulating this, because normally if I just clicked and did this, it would scale the whole image.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do that from any side here too, so vertically. Now just know the more that you manipulate this and warp this, it's going to be more stretched in those directions. Oh, where'd it go? See if I can get it to come back.
It's gone, dude. There you
There
go.
it is. There it is. Because it put it, see what it did? Because it's underneath third strike art, I couldn't, or the third strike game capture, I couldn't see it. So there we go. There's that. And then another thing that you can do too, real quick. So that was Shift, where we can manually stretch and manipulate the image from one side. If you hold Alt, you can take one side and trim the image down. That way it reduces its size, but then it also isn't showing like this bare white background. Um, it's not super necessary, but just in case you need to make any quick alterations, like if you are particularly unfond of Urian, like most of my friends out here, you can just literally cut him
Beautiful.
out and now nobody's up there. Yeah. And then for me, because I hate Gil and I can't really cut out, there we go. I can cut out KD's main of Dudley
There you
just so
go.
everything's
Now it's
fair game.
almost a perfectly balanced game.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's almost. Well, I think, is Yun still visible in there? I don't even think so. I think Yang. So yeah. Ah, no, he still made the cut. Damn. Sean rounding out the bottom tier as always, though. So that's an image. That's kind of the things you can do with it. Again, I don't want to get caught too much in the weeds with it, but those are just some examples of how you can implement that into your stream. I know if we want a pretty decent example, not to like rep my own stuff here. Back in the day, I had somebody make me this, right? So I had my 4x3 game capture here. This is from an actual Nintendo 64 with an Elgato game capture. And then I had the time splits here, but underneath all of that is this background. And this background, the way he designed it was cut out, but this sat underneath everything. I could just layer everything on top. Remember, we talked about examples and wanting to experiment and fix things and toy with things and always be fixing it. We can look at this beautiful facial expression that I have here and see the error that I made. You can see that this is supposed to outline my camera, but my camera overlaps it on these sides and on the bottom. I fix this later, but you can always catch something and you can always manipulate it just to be able to be in full control of it. So coming back, image slideshow. We'll just leave that as the name. It's the same thing. You're just going to add a couple of different files. Let me see where it's at here.
Actually, I have the perfect example. Go ahead and do what you're doing, but in season 1, we actually had an image slideshow as the Jazzy reel.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know that that still exists anywhere, but essentially we would just give people a folder, and
Yep.
that folder had all of the assets in it so that it would cycle through each image, and then they were all the same aspect ratio. So that way it just looked like an actual reel. And then we got way more advanced later when we created the actual Jazzy reel.
Yeah, there's me bragging to the skipper that I made it 11th this season. We'll go back into it just so I can show you what I was doing here. So we'll delete this. We'll start fresh to make sure everybody's on the same page. Like we do with all sources, we're going to click the plus sign down here, add in image slideshow. And we're just going to leave that as the title. And then you have all of these different things of how you can manage it. You can do fade, cut, swipe, slide. Let's do swipe to make it look really OG. Playback mode, loop, once or random. That means it'll only play one time or it'll continuously play. You can also change how long it sits in between transferring as well as the transition speed. your bounding size, aspect ratio. All this means is just how big of an area it's allowed to be displayed in. I would leave this as your desktop resolution or whatever the resolution you've set for your stream, just so that way you're not compounding anything. Basically, what will happen is if you change this to something lower and you have a larger image, it'll display, but it's a much smaller version of it and it's much harder to see. Then down here, you have your image files. You hit the plus sign, hit add files. Now, like KD was explaining, they would send out a folder. You can hit add directory and have it pull all of the images out of a folder. Since I'm adding in images from my downloads folder, I don't want to do that. So we're just going to add individual files. It's just going to be a bunch of Morrowind textures because I just got that set up.
Hell yeah.
Now, all of them are going to start playing on a loop, and you can put this wherever you want. And that's how that works. But it's really simple, really straightforward. The nice thing is with the Jazzy info reel, oh, I just can delete that now. The fact that you can just literally do a browser source and not having to deal with adding in a slideshow is really great and makes everything really simple and straightforward.
Yeah, the other thing to take note of with the difference between this slideshow and the info reel is that this slideshow doesn't have any audio coming out of it because it's not built in, right? The
Right.
browser source of the info reel does, however, and so that can be toggled through OBS itself. So there are certain sources that you can add that won't have any audio attached, and then there are certain ones that do. Anytime you add a source with audio, you'll necessarily want to try and toggle that audio to make sure that it's cohesive with everything else in the scene.
Absolutely. And again, you know, if you watch me speaking here, I'll move the mic closer. You can see how it's getting into the red here. I know we talked about mixing, mastering, and all of that too, but just keeping an eye out and making sure it's all cohesive. Whereas the desktop audio here, you still hear things coming out, but that's not going to be from my microphone. This is strictly from the Third Strike audio capture. So just something to pay attention to as you're adding in more things. And speaking of audio, our next option here is media. So I'm going to label this as cool combo, and it gives you a couple of different options here in the games or the speed that you want it to run at. What I used this for back in the day when I was doing speed runs for Super Mario 64 is I would take my personal best and I would have that display in the media side, and I would have a separate little box for it. That way people could watch it as I was running, and it would link up to how I had everything set up that it would start at the right time. But what we'll do is we'll go into document, no, it's videos, and we'll do one of my Twitter clips, and boom. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch the whole thing, but that I did kill Poe in bracket, and I definitely did talk shit to him about it. But all that is, it's just adding in a video file. You can change it to be whatever you so please. You can also increase the speed. So if I wanted just people to see how cool I really am, I can have it run at 150%. That way they can just see, yeah, I totally bodied this guy in a much faster timeline. Moving down the list, scene. Now, KD, I'll have you speak about this in a little bit more detail as I pull and click things through.
Yeah, so essentially, scene is you are importing an entire scene's worth of assets into your current scene. And so if you, for whatever reason, there are some duplicate assets that you want to carry over and you don't feel like adding each individual item, you can take most of those assets from a current scene and import them into your current scene. And so what it did is it took all the assets that were in the test stream, or I'm sorry, in the Jazzy info reel. Since we're in test stream 3S, it's just going to add everything that was in Jazzy info reel into test stream 3S. If there's anything that you want to remove after the fact, just like any other source, you can go through and you can edit and play with it as much as you want. But essentially, we just married the two scenes. This can be done literally an unlimited number of times with as many scenes as you want,
Yeah.
and to the point to where it just looks like madness. But if for whatever reason you just want to try and marry two scenes instead of dragging each individual asset over or trying to add each individual asset, if there's like multiple sources that you're trying to add to a scene that you know already exist in another scene, this is a good workaround for that.
Yeah, and it is extremely helpful. I mean, I've definitely used this before in lieu of coming in and copy and then pasting. right?
Mm-hmm.
It just depends, especially if you already have a pre-baked scene here that's already good to go, then you can literally put it in. Like in this case, it looks cool, right? We have our Third Strike gameplay. We have more blank space up here, but then we have the Jazzy info reel because we really love these guys. And we can have that running completely in the background as everything else is going on. That way nobody forgets why we're here. And then you remove it and boom. But by deleting it from your sources here, that doesn't delete it from your scene, which is really nice. So if you want to add it in, kind of fool around, mess around with things, it'll work just fine. It's not breaking anything on this side.
Yes, because, and this is something that's important to remember, each scene's sources are individualized. So anytime you delete something within its own scene, if it exists in other scenes, those other scenes will be left alone. So that source is still there in those other scenes.
Yep. And I, again, not getting too thick into the weeds about it, but that's why they always say, like, you don't want everything running through desktop audio. You want to set everything up individually. That way, on the Jazzy info reel, I don't want to have to hear the Third Strike loop of Gil's stage running around in the background. I only wanted to capture this audio and then my commentary guys. That way, everything's set up individually. Now, we're not going over that here, but just something to keep in mind. Next is text GDI plus. Really, we'll just label this as players. This is one way to do it. This is not like the best way to do it. There's definitely a lot more streamlined ways, but this is just essentially what it does.
This is Boiler Room,
Um,
baby.
yes, you can see. Let's do, to make this as scuffed as possible. We'll
Comic
make it Comic
Sans.
Sans. Yep,
Yes.
100%. I'm now an Alex main over here, and then we'll add another one. So obviously you're not going to name it players again. We're going to name this P2. Katie now means Ryu. You heard it here first.
I do online, and specifically
Do you
Denjin.
really?
Yeah. Denjin
Gross.
Online Ryu is my my online main for tournaments.
Gross. I don't want to hear that. So boom, there you go. Now you have P1, P2. That way everybody knows, okay, in watching this match, Mimiq is playing Alex and KD is playing Ryu. You have those hovered over here. That way if Ryu hops over to the other side, you know exactly who's still playing who. Now, again, like I said, this is a very scuffed and kind of quick and dirty way to do it, but it gets the point across, right? And it's really easy. If you need to go in, text. Now Vencabot's joined in, right? Well, I think Vencabot should be P1 because that's actually playing as Alex, but you get what I mean here. You can change that really quick, and then if you really wanted to get even better with it, you can do score, and you can add in the center, the score is 1-all. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then if you guys are looking for a bit more professional or clean looking player display options, there are definitely free programs out there that will do that for you. You can add those as browser sources as well. And there's all sorts of, I think there's like one of them is like tournament score.
Yep.
Another one is like player AB. Some of those are very easy to operate. I'm sure you can, James. James has a lot of experience doing that. And so if you guys just like look for those, you can Google them, and a lot of them are free. I think there is a paid one. I can't remember the name of it, but that's one that I know a lot of like streamers at majors use.
Mm-hmm.
And those come with like different display options, so they'll have like their own encasement graphics, and they'll be able to show things in a. It almost looks like it's cohesive with all the other assets on your stream. Those are different ways of doing this, but if you just want like a quick and easy, like real scuffed way of doing this, you can add the text in there, just like Mimiq just did here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not pretty. I mean, we used Comic Sans to get the point across that this is really just trying to get something out there to display. But even then, you don't necessarily even have to do that. It's really just getting the footage out there and making sure that people can see it. Removing 3 items. Next up, we have a video capture device. Now, I really tried hard to find it. I know I have a webcam somewhere, but in the move, I can't seem to find it. But this is essentially where you would go to be able to add in your camera.
Yep. And this can be anything from player cams to commentary cams to a crowd shot any cameras at all, really. You can add, depending on the capabilities of your PC and your
Controller cam.
yeah, your basically your setup will dictate how many cameras you can attach to. But you know, for stronger PCs that have you know, multiple slots for you to be able to do this, you can connect you know, a bunch of cameras, so that way you got player 1 cam, player 2 cam, you've got commentary cam, and really outside of that, anything is just sort of additional. Those are really going to be the three most important. Or you can have it like on a USB hub, so that it's not just all, you know, a bunch of wires hanging everywhere in your computer.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this is where you would add it, and then here you can basically add each one depending on the source. So if you had like an HD Elgato, that would show up here in that drop down list. If you had like a Logitech, that would show up here. And then if you had anything else, you know, plugged in, essentially all of your video capture devices would show up here in this list. The other thing to take note with that, because a lot of these cameras now come with audio attached, they have microphones with them. If you want to control the audio on those, you have the option to do that through OBS. I would highly suggest that you mute them, though, because a lot of times what will happen is you're not even aware that the audio is being captured, and you'll just get like all this random audio that will come through, and you're like, what's causing that? And so by default, I would recommend that you just mute all video capture audio, so that way you're not getting any unwanted audio, and then you can go through and add it back in if you want to.
Yeah, and to kind of put that into perspective too, if you don't mute the audio coming from your webcam mic, it can put you into tough spots. When I was streaming, there was a clip that thankfully I couldn't find, and I don't know where it is anymore. But I muted my my actual microphone for the setup that I had, but my webcam mic was still active, and I had no idea. And I got broken up with on stream, and you could hear one side of the phone call through the webcam mic.
Oof.
So just always you know, double triple check, you know, especially if you're streaming something and you want to be able to mute it and not have anybody hear it. You want to make sure that you are set up and taken care of. Thankfully in this case it wasn't too bad. It was just a funny bit that I got, you know, people in my circle definitely didn't let me hear the end of it for a little bit, but you live and you learn.
Yeah, so that's definitely it's definitely something that you're gonna want to pay attention to. Particularly if you know, you ever stream from like a laptop. When I was streaming locals, I would have a laptop camera attached to it, so that way people can kind of, you know, look at the commentary, or they can look at the venue or whatever. And I was actually getting a bunch of audio through there, but because it's sitting right next to the cab, you know, you would get audio from the cab, you would get audio from the game, and sometimes you know, it would just sound like crazy delay. And so you would just be able to hear like this audio doubled up, and people would be like, well, what's going on? Why does it sound so crazy in here? A lot of times it's just, you know, your video capture devices that are capturing audio as well.
Absolutely. And now last but not least, we have window capture. What could this ever mean?
That's my
I
favorite
feel like
capture.
it's the best capture. So we'll do this. I'm going to label this as bracket. We'll put bracket capture. So all this is doing is capturing a window, so you can choose a bunch of different ones. We're going to capture Chrome, and this is a copy of the bracket that I just recently won. Shout out your boy. But essentially all it's doing is just it's capturing all of Chrome. Now, a quick disclaimer: if you're capturing all of Chrome, they see everything that's on here. So if
Yep.
you have anything that is not so savory, like I don't care if somebody is seeing that I want to learn how to speed run Ocarina of Time, or they, you know, a link to my Twitter, nothing like that's going to be crazy, right? But just keep that in mind. If you're doing a window capture, it captures everything within that window that you can see, they can now see. Another big reason why you never really want to go into this side of, you know, Twitch while you're streaming like I'm doing here.
Yep.
Do as I say, not as I do, just because there's too many chances for something to slip up or something to fall through the cracks, and then you accidentally dox yourself for whatever reason. So just be careful with it. That is its purpose. It's not just for Chrome though. Like if I wanted to, I can come back into bracket capture, and I can choose Discord, and then you can have it set to that, or I can have it be the, let me see here. Nope, that's the wrong window. I think I still have this opened up. Let me see if I can get it to select it. Like I know some people that stream this will put on the Fightcade 2 window. You know, I've never been a fan of it, but to each their own. Some people will leave this up in the background. I know some shit talk will definitely occur through here, but those are a couple examples of what you can use all of these sources for. Again, this is not the end all be all to it. This is not the final thing. This is not the full limit to it. I will tell you, in my experience of streaming, I got really creative and just messed around with things. I broke a lot of things within my own stream setup, and I had to inevitably fix it. But there's a lot of things that you can do to really tweak and make it your own and have a lot of fun with it. Like, I know I've already told KD and Venka this a couple of times, but like one of my favorite things that I had was, even though I don't play Alex, he had one of my favorite taunts, and he would come in and just scream weak. So if I missed a skip in a speed run, or if somebody knocked me out in whatever fighting game I was playing, or something bad happened, they could pay channel points, not bits, but individual channel points. And he would come in from the side and be like, "You suck," but he would also scream weak, and then the text would be rolling underneath. There's so many different things that you can really do this with this program. We're just scratching the surface, but really, like I've said multiple times, we don't want this to be, here's every intricate system. We want you to feel a lot more comfortable with the setup. That way you have the inertia to be able to go in and say, okay, maybe I don't want to be a jazzy bracket just yet, but I want to try this and I want to get my feet wet. We want you to have a baseline understanding to know where to go from here.
Yes. So Rigby asked a question here about the Fightcade window specifically, and basically he wants to know if, when that Fightcade window closes and a match ends and then you get another match that's open, do you have to recapture it? That is not the case. The way that OBS works
Nope.
is essentially it works like a source, right? So when that source is active, it will display it. When that source is inactive, it will not display it. But as soon as it becomes active again, it will display it again. So you can also toggle that. There are like preview buttons, and there's all sorts of ways that you can toggle that. But really, the important thing is you do not have to set it every time. And so I think that's the most important takeaway from that. If once you have a source set, so long as it can pull from that source and that source is active, it will display it.
Right, exactly. And the only reason why I had to really finagle it is because I had it minimized, which means that it was still running. It just wasn't picked up by OBS immediately. So all I did was I just clicked out of the properties here, I hit cancel, and then I brought this up from being minimized. And see, if it's minimized, it's not being displayed. But then the second I bring it back up, boom, it's fine. Now, when you launch into a game, like right now, I have, obviously, it's capturing the Fightcade window and the game capture at the same time. So all this is doing is capturing both at the same time. Now I know if you go into full screen, it's like, oh, does this minimize? No, this Fightcade window is always running in the background unless you forcibly choose to minimize it.
Yep.
Okay. I
Uh,
think that's all of the sources that they have in here. I know there's depreciated, but really that's just another older form of text, which isn't as helpful.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, guys, we just wanted to give you, an introductory tour of OBS, get familiarized with some of the buttons and some of the options. We, like Mimiq had just said, we are really only scratching the surface. There are so many different options and customizations, and there's a ton of creative control that you have with this program. There's so many things that you can do and ways that you can customize every single asset that you have on a stream, not just visually but also with audio. And so I encourage you guys to not be intimidated by OBS. Download it, mess with it, just play around with it and test a bunch. I think first 100 streams is a good barometer for doing a bunch of testing and being creative with your stream and figuring out what you like, what works, what you don't like. And then once you have enough experience under your belt, there's all sorts of other resources outside of what we're doing here that can sort of inform what you're trying to do or what you may want to do. OBS is a pretty expansive program when you really get into it, and so really the options that you have available to you are almost unlimited once you get really into the nitty gritty with the program, and it's great for a basically a free program. You
Yeah.
know, for it being, free and readily available on every platform, or basically every OS. It's pretty robust. And I think Mimiq and we both started with Streamlabs, but eventually I find that most people just find their way over to OBS because of the freedom that it affords and because of the creative control that you have.
Yep.
And so once you get more experience with, how all the assets work, how all the sources work, all of the options available to you, keyboard shortcuts, toggling, filters, and being able to mess with all of the settings and options, the comfort that will that you grow into with OBS will allow you to sort of get deeper and deeper into it, to the point to where you're like touching things that people will never realize. They're like, there's no way that anyone is noticing this, but I noticed it, so now I have to mess with it.
Yep.
There's a ton of that goes on. But for the purposes of this seminar, we were just kind of focused on the introductory parts. If there's nothing else, Mimiq, I kind of want to just jump into some Q&A because there were some great questions in the chat.
Well, yeah. The one last thing I'll say before we get into Q&A was that Katie mentioned freedom, right? It gives you the freedom to creatively go through everything, and that's a pun in my opinion, because Streamlabs OBS is great, but then they lock all of these creative features behind a paywall, and you feel like your back's against the wall. It's like, well, I
Yep.
don't know if I'm taking streaming seriously. I don't know if this is something that's really worth the investment. I'll tell you right now, it isn't, because if you value your time like any of us really should, taking a few minutes like this and setting it up yourself, you can do limitless amounts of things without having to pay a single penny.
Yep.
All it takes is just a little bit of your own time and, the willingness to be able to ask questions to people that have been doing this for a long time. I know, I'll tell you, I even asked Katie and Venka before we got set up here with any new additions to OBS Studio if we needed to cover it and how to go through those, because I want to make sure that everybody gets the best, most up-to-date current information as possible.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, guys. I'm gonna go through this first question that Rigby asked because I think it's a really great question. But he says, is there any big advantage to using audio interface over something like a USB microphone or headset? I have an XLR mic and an audio interface, but I feel like there are issues with getting the computer to recognize it sometimes, let alone OBS. It also doesn't like to take input through the interface and output through the computer speakers. So if you use the interface and you have your headphones coming out of the interface, will it let you hear everything from your stream or just the mic? So in this question alone, there are like 6 different
4 or 5,
responses.
yeah.
The first thing that I will say is that the very first time you try to use an audio interface with OBS, it will confuse the absolute shit out of you. The way that Windows handles audio is so confusing for no reason at all. I will say that the way that Windows handles audio in terms of being able to adjust it or customize it is so limited compared to an actual physical mixer. A physical mixer will allow you to mess with frequencies, it will allow you to mess with volume and decibels, channels and panning. There's all sorts of options that you get with a physical mixer that you will not get with Windows, and you will also not get with OBS. It is almost always preferable to use a physical mixer, particularly a good one. One that has multi-channel with with options for frequencies and for volume. Those things are almost always going to be the best thing. However, setting that up within Windows itself is actually the complicated part. It's not OBS, actually. In my experience, more often than not, it's the way that Windows handles audio interfaces that makes it complicated. There are different options within Windows that make it so weird because Windows is trying to identify 2 things, basically. What is an audio output and what is an audio input, right? It's trying to figure out where am I sending audio out to and where am I taking audio in from. And so if you plug in an audio interface that has multiple outputs and multiple inputs, it's going to freak your computer out. Your computer is going to be like, I don't know where to send anything. I'm like, I may send audio to one thing here and another thing there. You may be able to send audio in, but you're not getting any audio out. And so it is very weird. I will say that if you have issues with your audio interface, particularly with OBS, one of the major things that I have found is often that audio interface was not already active prior to OBS being open. If you have it active, meaning that it's plugged in and turned on, and Windows recognizes that it's plugged in and turned on, when you open OBS, it's actually a lot easier to recognize in OBS once it's an asset or it's a source. I keep calling them assets, but really I mean source. Once it's a source that's already active, OBS will be able to detect it. What happens is if you turn it on or plug it in and then turn it on after OBS is open, OBS will freak out too. So the best practice for audio or any sort of source that you're trying to use in OBS is to have it already turned on and plugged into your computer before you even open OBS. That's the easiest workaround that you can have in preventative care. After that, it is really complicated, man, because I've dealt with Behringers, I've dealt with mixers, I've dealt with 4-channel mixers and 16-channel mixers, and really, unfortunately, most of the time it's on the Windows side that you're having the issues. If you go into your sound settings, meaning you right-click on your sound icon, there are basically two different sound settings. There are what is your main audio output, and so that's determining whether it's your headset or it's your speakers. If you have your computer hooked up to a television, you can often output your audio to whatever that TV source is. That is like the very basic layer, right? You're just switching sources, and then in that you have a volume slider and you can control the volume that way. But then the other is when you right click on it, you can actually get into the sound settings of your computer. And this is where you have all of your inputs, you have all of your outputs, and then in advanced, right? Advanced and volume mixer, all of these options are here. So this is where you can control all of the individual options. When you have a mixer plugged into Windows, there is often a distinction that needs to be made for Windows where you either want this to be an audio output device or you want it to be an audio input device. There's that. But then there's also the ability to listen to device as well as put audio out, right? So you're using it as an audio input device. And so your computer is like, okay, this is a microphone. But you also want to be able to hear the audio that is coming out of it. And so within that, you actually need to click on a button that's specific to Windows that says listen to this device. And so that is on the Windows side of things. It's very hard to explain unless you're actually doing this, in real time. But to explain or to give you a basic answer to your question, Rigby, if you can find a way to make it work, it is almost always preferable to use a physical interface versus the digital interface. As a person that has used plenty of digital interfaces before, I fucking hate digital interfaces when it comes to audio. They're so bad.
They're awful. They're terrible. They're convoluted and they're not helpful.
No, they're not helpful. They're very confusing and it's not good. But a physical interface makes sense because when you turn a knob, you get a direct response and you understand what happened. When you do that with digital, that is almost never the case. And so if there's any sort of advice that I could give you, it would be to find a way to have your computer and Windows set up for that digital interface for that mixer, and that way when you open OBS, it's literally just adding that source, and then you can configure it on the physical side. I wouldn't even do anything on the digital side. I would literally configure everything on the physical side. So once you have that audio source added to OBS, you can configure it as much as you want. Often these things have things like mute buttons. If you want to actually mute and you don't have a mute button, you can literally just turn the output volume down. All of that is very easy to do on the physical side. Whereas if you're trying to do it on the digital side, you're going to be struggling. So that would be my recommendation.
That was a great answer and covered all of those. Rigby, let us know if you have any other follow-ups to that. Scrolling through. For the Windows source for Fight K2, do you have to recreate it? Okay, we answered that, but then Rigby followed up with, so as long as Fight K2 doesn't change the name of the window with an update, yes and no. I know that's not really the answer you wanted to hear, but I mean, it can change the name of it and it will still capture it. The only thing that changes it is just its location. So if I go back in, I bring this up here, right? We'll just do a window capture, leave that blank, and then we'll select this one. Here we go. So it's still here, right? And right now it's hovering over third strike. But if I change it to 2x, it's still being captured despite the fact that its name is probably changed, right? That's going to be fine. Now, if it's a massive window change, like what I had issues with, like think of what's an old PC game? Okay, think of like StarCraft or Fallout 3 or something like that, where it has the initial launcher window. Sometimes it would capture Fallout 3, the launcher window, but then it wouldn't update to the actual game when it would launch. That would be the different thing. But because this isn't the window itself for Fightgate 2 isn't changing into the game, it's launching a separate window that you're capturing. That's where that kind of distinction lies.
The other thing too, and I'm not sure. I think OBS has it. There is an option when you're selecting your game capture or window capture source. If I remember correctly, there's one that's like match under window, or yeah, capture method.
Match title.
Yeah, there's like match title, otherwise find window of same executable. Sometimes, or like of same type, sometimes those things will work as well, so that if something gets updated and has like a slight, let's say it's like Fightcade version 2.2.1, right? And then it gets updated to 2.2.2. It will find whatever is closest to that.
Right, exactly. In Rigby, I know exactly what you're talking about because I had to deal with the same thing. When I started out streaming, I didn't have the N64 set up and I didn't have a capture card. I was just capturing from desktop and from the emulator itself. It doesn't work that way anymore. I know that was a big pain point for me when I first started. It is something to be aware of though, so I'm glad that you brought it up. If that does happen, just double check your sources. And I mean, like I did before when we were setting this up, this 5K window didn't show up. So what did I do? I hit cancel and I opened it back up, made sure that it wasn't minimized, and boom, popped up in this list. If it doesn't, if you at first you don't succeed, try again, right? That's the old
100%.
saying. Like keep beating your head against the wall with it, but try other things. Make sure you have everything set up, everything's non-minimized, everything's visible, and then it can pull it from anywhere. Like right now, you can't really see. Well, actually, I can change it in Discord. Let me do that real quick. Change stream. We'll do. So right now you're looking at my second monitor. Now you're looking at my first monitor. But where is Fightcade and everything? Well, that's all the way underneath all of this stuff here.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't have to be at the main front of your display. All it has to do is just be visible, and then OBS can pull it from whatever side that's in.
Yep. So even if it's not the very much like the layers in your sources, even if it's not the frontmost layer, so long as it's an active source, it will pull it and make it visible. The other thing that I don't think we actually explained very well, this black area of the screen is literally what everyone on the stream will see. So everything that gets displayed on this black screen, which I think they call the preview screen or the projector screen, depending on who you're asking, is what gets displayed as it's seen on your preview here. There are different options here actually. If you want to project this to a different screen, so let's say you have two monitors and you want this to be projected onto a second monitor, you have the option to do that. If you want to hide the preview, you can actually hide the preview and that saves resources. Let's say you're working on a PC that doesn't have the resources to be able to both stream and project the preview. You can do that as well. If you want it to be like its own standalone source, you can make it full screen. There's all sorts of options that you have with the preview screen. But basically, the preview screen is just showing you exactly what your stream is viewing at that moment. Similarly, if you were to change scenes here and you were to go to the Jazzy info reel, but you want your second screen because it's a monitor for your commentators to view the game action, you can continue to project that onto the second screen. And so even though you've changed scenes on your main monitor, you can continue to project that on your second monitor. And so that way, when you change scenes on your end, it doesn't affect anything that's going on for your commentators. This is something that I know most streamers do whenever they have multiple setups and they want to make sure that they're in control of all the background aspects of the stream, but everything that the stream is seeing is basically what the commentators are seeing. That's one way to go about it. And so you have a lot of creative control with this stream preview. And so that's just something that I wanted to point out because I know it's pretty important.
Rigby went in to ask, another question I was going to ask, is 2 or 3 monitors a necessity so that you can have game on one screen, then all of the OBS stuff on a second screen, or the chat up so you can easily engage with chat? Is it a necessity? No. Is it really nice? Yeah. I wish I had 6 monitors to be able to manipulate everything at arm's reach, but it's not realistic. There are ways to kind of work with what you have. I will tell you, when I started streaming, I was a single monitor.
Yep.
I did all of my game capture. I did all of my Twitch chat. I did all of everything, all of my settings. And I didn't have, I spent so much money on building the computer and all of the setup and like the microphone and everything. I didn't buy a Stream Deck, right? Where the actual button panel where you can change things. So I had to go in and manually change it with my mouse and keyboard, or I set up hotkeys. There's so many different ways that you can manipulate it that no, having multiple monitors is not a necessity. Is it a really nice thing to have? Absolutely. But don't feel like, again, that you have to invest more and more money to have a good stream. You can have a perfectly decent stream just like this without anything. And this
Dude,
is all running off of one monitor.
I'm going to give you the perfect analogy because when I first started streaming, it was very much the same way. I had one single monitor. I did not believe in multi-monitors. I was like, what do I need 2 for? I just have the one,
Yeah.
dude. I don't need anything else. And I actually ended up using my phone often while I was streaming as the chat, right?
Yep.
So I would
Yep.
interact via my phone, and then I would play the game on the only monitor I have. I will explain the difference to you now, Rigby. I went from doing that to having 3 screens. And when I got my second screen, I told myself I would never go back. I was like, I was struggling so hard. It was so unnecessary. I could have got a second screen at any point, but I was resistant to it. And as soon as I got that second screen, I was like, 2 is not enough. I need 3.
Yep. Yep.
And so now I have the 3 monitors, and it's great. And I'm looking for a 4th.
Well, see, yeah, and then you're opening up a can of worms, right? Because it's like getting a taste for it, and then you're chasing that high of, wow, this is so easy, and then you're moving everything around. You can access it and see it all at a glance. But then you're also introducing more levels of complexity of, okay,
Yes.
I only have it on this monitor. Where is my game? I can't find my game. It's not on it's on a third monitor that I forgot about, or it, is hidden away up there. It's all about maximizing the potential of what your setup is, which is what this is for. Try again. That's why we say experiment with things, let it break, work to fix it, ask questions, because at the end of the day, you don't have to expend thousands of dollars for a stream setup.
No.
I had a really crappy laptop, a literal crap top that could barely run anything, and I ran a very, very weak stream, but it was just for like old school Zelda, and I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was just playing through it and wanting my friends to watch while I was in another country. That was it. And you don't need anything super expensive or super high tech to be able to execute at a high level, or even at the bare minimum for what, for instance, Jazzy Circuit would need for you to document what your event was in your placements.
Okay. If there's no other questions, and the only reason why I'm saying this is because I have the perfect analogy for this, but I cannot say this on the recording because I don't want to blow us up. But if there's no further questions, I'm going to do 2 things for you guys. I'm going to actually answer or add to that answer that Mimiq just gave with some background Jazzy knowledge that I probably shouldn't share with you guys, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then I'm also going to show you guys my Streamlabs setup, which I don't want to show, but I have a bunch of cool assets in there dating all the way back from Jazzy 1 that I want to just kind of show you guys. So if there's no other questions, then I think we're going to end it here. Please do keep in mind that we are going to upload this to our Jazzy YouTube channel. And I want to thank all of you guys for being here. But most importantly, I want to thank Mimiq and Vencabot for being so fucking clutch and stepping in due to the unavailability for other people and just filling in such a great way. Thank you guys for being part of this. And thank you, Mimiq, for helping out.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you everybody for showing up and asking terrific questions. Again, like I said at the beginning, there's no such thing as a stupid question. The only one that is a stupid question is the one left unasked. So I appreciate everybody's help this afternoon.
All right, thanks guys. I'm gonna end the recording now.